Again, good morning. I've dropped in the chat the sign-in sheet where you can also indicate on there if you want some follow-up support as well as the resource document. My name is Claudia Allen and welcome. We are here to discuss MAP growth for teachers and we are going to get started. So we're excited that you're here with us this morning. The presentation this morning, the hour that we have allotted, half of that time will be spent just going through an overview of the reports that's available to teachers in MAP and just how to interpret them. It's not meant to be a long session. So the first half will be just an overview. The second half of the hour time that we have is meant for you to ask those specific questions. Maybe you brought, or maybe something that you heard in the session in the 30 minutes and you would just like some clarity around. But feel free also to stop and ask those questions as I'm presenting, but know that the second half hour is to just answer any of your questions. So we're excited that you're here and we're going to get started. There's some more folks that's coming in now. So I'm going to drop in the chat again, the sign-in sheet as well as the resource link. So we're just going to jump in and get started. You'll see here are my team members. Kelly, who's you can see her face on the call this morning. Tamara Easter, Ryan Reba, and Lauren Campbell is not with us today, but Mary is here. And we're excited that you're here with us for this session on MAP growth for teachers. So one of the first things and one of the documents that's linked in your folder, we do have a new updated normative Lincoln study for North Carolina. And what you see, it's new and improved in a sense where the math portion of the Lincoln study is fully updated with the new norms and based on the end of grade studies that we have here in North Carolina, that section is fully updated. However, the literacy, the reading side of this Lincoln study is not quite fully updated. We've updated the norm data, how the percentiles, but however, the RIT scores have not yet been adjusted. However, they're still reliable source until we get the data updated later on in the spring. So we're still waiting for that information from the NWEA, but this Lincoln study is as updated as it's going to get. And you'll notice we have new features on the Lincoln study, and you do have the new version of the Lincoln study in the folder that we shared with you. One of the things we do want to call out with this Lincoln study, you notice that there's three components to this. It's the spring chart, the winter chart, the fall chart, and the normative data chart. And so we've call outs on the side of the actual Lincoln study this time, just to guide your use of the document. Oftentimes we have school leaders and teachers using the document, but not quite sure what all the different charts are when they're to be used. So we had that call out on the document so you can guide your use. Remember the spring chart when you're trying to assess in North Carolina or in CMS, how are my students performing over time, how they're achieving. And also when you're asking this, the question, where do I need to begin teaching my students? We always want to refer to the spring chart, whether it's the fall, winter, or spring, and we're looking at our student data, we want to use the spring chart. Remember, MAP is an assessment that identifies gaps in the student learning, their zone of proximal development. So you always should be comparing when you're trying to assess the amount of gap that exists with where you want the students to be and where they physically are in their learning. You always want to use the spring chart because that's what the MAP assessment is designed to do. Find the student zone of proximal development. And that's why we always use the spring chart. So when we get our report in the fall, when we get our student reports in the winter, when we get our student reports in the spring, we're always going to go to the spring chart because the spring chart tells us where the end of road, where we want them to be. And we always comparing in the spring chart where our kids really are. The other two parts of the chart, the winter and the fall, notice it says only in nice, bold, and underline. You use those when we're setting short-term goals for our students and for MTSS. Those two charts are only used when setting short-term goals for MTSS. And then the normative data chart on the bottom just gives you a national norm idea. MAP is a national assessment, so the norms are based at the national norm, which is the 50th percentile. Our standards in North Carolina are more rigorous than the 50th percentile. That is why we said do not use the norm data when you're trying to see how your students are achieving in North Carolina. We always fall short if we use that normative data. But if we want just to compare how my students are doing across with students in the nation, we use the normative data. But when we're trying to see aggressively, where are my students in North Carolina, how they achieving by North Carolina standards, again, we always go to the spring. So that's new and updated, and it's in your folder, your participants folder, that you can have access. The first part of our presentation reports will focus on growth this morning, and we're going to specifically do, once we now have winter and spring data, how do we monitor and assess our students' growth? And that's where we're going to spend our time for the first part of the presentation. We're going to look at one particular report, but there are two views to this report. Is the Achievement, Status, and Growth report. And in that report, we're going to identify which report to track growth, and we're going to identify the topics and the strengths of our student growth in those topics. So let's jump in. The report is the Achievement, Status, and Growth. You can get the projection, you can get the summary, or the quadrant view. We're going to look at the summary view and the quadrant view this morning. Let me hide my floating screen. I am not monitoring the chat, so please come off mute and ask me your question. If I'm on a particular report and you want to ask a clarifying question or something that you're seeing and that was not clear to you, please come off mute and ask that. Your faces are hidden for me, and so I can just see my screen, and I'm not monitoring the chat. I actually hid my floating chat box. So please just come off mute, interrupt me, say, hey, Claudia, I need to ask this question. That's quite fine, because this time is yours. So really just come off mute and do that. So the report, again, that at this point in time of the year that we want to pull to monitor, are our students growing in our class, and where am I getting that growth, and who might need additional support, is the Achievement, Status, and Growth Summary Report. And you can see that here. Again, this report you can get in projections form, you can get in summary, and you can see it in quad. We're going to look at the summary form. It tells you here, and you have a copy of this presentation in the where you can click through, like I'm clicking through here. So you can, we show you here how to filter the report, so you can get the right information. That's down here, and that's where you can choose whether you want the projection, whether you want the summary, or whether you want and how do you, which is the term benchmark windows you want to use. We give you guiding questions here to help you interact and engage in asking the right questions and knowing what this report provides to you. So let's dig a little deeper into this report. This is what the Achievement, Status, and Growth Summary Report looks like. You notice over here, we'll see the reading, the content. This is a class, and then just the details about this report, the comparison periods from fall to winter. That's what you want to print for yourselves now. I mean, we want to access for yourselves now. You notice it has the student identifying information and grade level and the date they took the test. The achievement part, which is how they're performing, how they're achieving in regards to levels 1, 2, 3, or 4, on grade level, below grade level, above grade level, is right here. You can compare how they were achieving in the fall to how they were achieving in the winter. And I like the fact this is achievement, because this is where the percentile matters. When you want to assess your student achievement level, the only numbers you should be looking at is the percentile range. That tells you if they're at level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. The percentiles tell you that. What do I need to be able to use? I need my handy dandy Lincoln study, and that's what you're going to need to identify exactly where I need to be. Oftentimes people use the RIT score to try to track achievement. Wrong, wrong, wrong. RIT scores tells me instruction, percentile tells me achievement. If I want to know what to teach my students and where they're ready to learn, that's what the RIT scores are for. And I go to my learning continuum. When I want to know if my students are on grade level, below grade level, or above grade level, I use the percentiles. And so I can see how they were achieving in the fall, and then how are they achieving in the winter. The growth section of the report has lots of information, and I'm just going to narrow down a little bit later for you what is happening here and what to pay attention to. And then you have some summary information down here. So what I want to do now is just to call out some information that I really want you to focus on. So again, I said the percentile, and you can see here, there's lots of call out information for you to focus on. The percentile in the bowl is what you want to use to track your growth. So how do they do in the fall? And go into my Lincoln study, how do they do in the winter? So if I'm going, and let me model this for you with the Lincoln study. So I have one student here, and I'm going to exit out of here real quick so I can move this over. All right. So I have one student that I want to take a look at. So, sorry, I don't know, something happened with this. Let me move it over. No, I'm just trying to adjust it so my information is where it needs to be. I apologize for this, but it's a little bit skewed and I just need to move it over. All right, let's see if that works for us now. So your level, when it pops up, you'll see a student at level 4 in the fall is 64. The student achieved a 66 in the winter. They're still at level 4. How do I know that? I would go to my spring chart. Remember I mentioned using the spring chart when I'm trying to assess where my students are currently performing. I always use my spring chart. So this is a 5th grade class. And if I find my 5th grade level and I go across my Lincoln study and I'm looking for the percentiles, and I notice that 64 is in between 58 and 84, and the achievement level for 5th grade is at level 4. So I just put an L4 next to it so I can see the student maintain their position in their achievement level. You can, and I would recommend you do this with all your students. Take run the report and just see the movement of students across time. One of the things I do want to point out to you here, that the projections that MAP gives students maintains them. If the student achieved their projections, even to 5 points above their projection, it maintains them. Let me say that again. MAP projections are intended to keep a student at the performance and achievement level that they are. It's not meant to grow them when they give a projection. MAP projections does not push a child into another achievement level. It's meant to maintain a student. Even if the student get 5 more points than what they were projected, they're still in that maintaining range. Even if they get 5 points below their projections, they're still in that maintaining range. So you need to understand this. When students meet their MAP projections, even 5 points plus, they're still only maintained, they have not moved achievement level. We want to be cognizant of that information. So we want to look at this report and track our student growth by doing a similar process as I demonstrated here. Now, what you really want to do is to make sure you're understanding first how they're achieving across time. So let's look at the growth area. Remember, I just talked about the projected rates. And remember, I talked about if they achieve their projected rate, and how do you know if they achieve it? Is right here in the observed growth. So MAP projects them to be here. This is their projected growth points. This is what they actually receive, right? And so you can come straight to this column, which is the quickest way to assess, did they grow and did they grow at the rate that I want? So for CMS teachers, you want your students to beat their MAP projections and at least by 6 points for them to move into another achievement level. So hear me, you want them to not only grow and meet their MAP projections, but for a student to jump into their other achievement level from a level 2 to a level 3, or from a level 1 to a level 2, or whatever the levels you want them to move levels, they have to achieve their MAP projections and get at least 6 points on top of that for them to move. And this is all mathematically done, and I'm saying it, but it's the research that MAP has done behind it, and we know based on CMS, that's what our students, based on North Carolina, that's how our students need to achieve and grow in MAP for us to see them move achievement levels. So when I have teachers that say to me when I was in the schoolhouse as their assistant principal, Ellen, but the kids grew and they met their projections, and that's great. They're maintaining, but if I have a level 1 student who met their projections, this is a level 1. I need for them not only to meet their projections, but get at least 6 points. And we have found that's the threshold on top of whatever they're supposed to get, so that they can at least move into a level 2. And that's just one example. So let's dive a little bit deeper in what I'm speaking to you here. Focus on this section that blew up, the growth section. So we're going to focus, I'm going to give you the quick, easy way for you to use these key indicators here to know what they mean, so you can do a quick glance to know which students are growing at the rate that we need them to grow. So here's what we typically see. When you look at this MET projected growth column, and we see the yes with no symbol behind it. Notice yes, there's no symbol. Let's go over here. This is one of the students we're looking at. Yes with no symbol means they've met their projections, and they're still at the same level. Okay, that's just telling me they got it, they met that projection, but they're still at the same level. The yes, sorry, let me go back. That's not the truthfulness. The yes with no symbol tells me that they met their projections and they are 5 or more points above their projections. That's what we want to see. Sorry, let me just make that clear again. So rewind. The yes with no symbol tells me the growth is above normal. The growth is above normal. And this is where it gets some confusing, but the yes with no symbol tells me the student is growing above the normal growth. So that means they met their projections and grew at least that 5 to 6 points above or more. So now they've moved into the other achievement level. So let me say it again. The yes with no symbol means not only did they meet their MET projections, but they've grown so much more, which we know typically is 5 or more points, that now they're moving into a different achievement level. That is the ideal situation we want to see in our MEP students' growth, to let us know they're growing at the rate that we want them to grow to move achievement levels. The yes with the symbol means that the students have maintained their growth is normal. The yes with the symbol tells me the growth is within normal range, meaning they can meet their projections and they're within 5 points up. So when that 5 points, they're within that 5 points. Say yes, they met their projections and they could get at least up to 5 points, but they're still maintaining. All right. Then there is the no with the symbol. The no means they did not meet their projections and they fell at least 0 to 5 points, 1 to 5 points below their projections, but they're still in the maintaining range. They did not meet, the no with the symbol means they did not meet their projections, but they're still in normal range. Okay, so we didn't lose ground. Yes with the symbol and no with the symbol means the students are still maintaining. We did not lose ground in their growth. They're still at the same level. If they were level 3, they're still at level 3. If they're at level 4, they're still at level 4. The no with no symbol is the danger zone. The no with no symbol tells me the student not only did not meet their projections, they took a nosedive in their growth and they fell below average non-growth. So it's not typical negative growth. It's beyond typical negative growth. And those are the students that's hard to pull them back up for you to see any growth in their traction. You can pull them back up, but the growth is so large, it is going to take a lot of work to get them back up. So you really don't want to see no with no symbols on your growth projections. So ideally, we want to see yeses with no symbol. That is telling me, way to go, Claudia, your students are growing and they're moving achievement levels. The next thing I want to see is yes with a symbol. It means that they met their growth and they're maintaining their level. The no with a symbol, I don't really want to see it, but at least I know if it's a no with a symbol, they didn't meet their growth, but they didn't fall in achievement level. They're still in the range. The no with a no symbol is the worst thing I want to see because it means the student has fell and did not make their growth and they fell more than 5 points negative of where they were supposed to be, which is a nosedive in their growth, and we don't want to see that. So that's a quick way to assess the type of growth you're getting in your class, especially with teachers who have a lot of things to do. You want to make those quick assessments of how your students are growing over time. The next view is the same report, but you're seeing it in the quadrant chart. So let's take a look at what we mean when we say the quadrant chart. So there's a couple of things on the quadrant chart. This is an interactive report. Quadrant chart is an interactive report. And when you run it, it means it's live, interactive. You can move things and you can play with things. The first thing you want to do is to filter how you see the reports. And you see the filters are all here. One of the things that they will automatically populate is these pluses and or these shapes you see here with no names. If you click on the first filter area, it says show student names, you can see the names of your students. You want to do that. You want to keep the quadrant colors so you can see the 4 different colors because it helps just with processing. Then you can choose your subject that you want to focus on. And if you want to do subgroups or leave them all, you can do that. The next thing you want to do is to change this achievement line. This line is the achievement line as indicated right here. This line is the growth line over here as indicated. We never touch the growth line, but we always adjust the achievement line. The reason why we adjust the achievement line is so we can get an accurate portrait or picture of where our students are falling based on their grade level and the achievement that is for that grade level. So for example, if I want, and I'm going to exit out of here real quick so I can go to my quadrant. If I'm a 5th grade teacher in reading, I want to see my reading students, and I want to adjust and to see where my 5th grade students are really falling, I will come to my Lincoln Study, go over to level 4, because level 4 is a nice wide range, and it gives me a good place where my students could sit. And I want to use the lowest percentile level of level 4, which is 65. Let's go back in the presentation. So what I would do now is when I come to my quadrant, after I filter how I want to see it, I will then either drag my achievement line to 65 or type in the box down at the bottom, 65 versus achievement percentile, and it will adjust it for me. Because now when I see my students populate in the quadrant, I know that it's the truth about where they're truly falling in the right quadrant. So we always adjust the achievement line to this first number in the percentile range, level 4, to get a true picture of who are falling in what quadrants. So let's talk about what the quadrants mean. You see there are 4 quadrants here. The bottom part of the quadrants represents students who are having low growth. Let's look at the pink. So this little fella right here is running swiftly with the wind behind him. I call him Usain Bolt. This little fella right here is running swiftly away from the achievement line, if you notice that. These are my students who are low performing students, and I'm getting low growth out of them. So students are in this quadrant. They're low performing students, and I'm not getting any growth out of them. This is what we call the danger zone, right? But there's hope. The higher the students are in the pink area, we are getting more, they're running slower away from the achievement line, right? The lower they are, the faster they're running away. So if you look at your quadrant, there are kids in the pink up top, they're not as fast as Usain Bolt down here. They're running, but they're doing the trot, right? Or maybe away. So just know that even their position in the quadrant tells you the speed at which they're growing. This is fast non-growth, slow non-growth up here. But it's low achieving, low growth. When I look at my yellow quadrant to my right, look at my little turtle fellow. My turtle guy right here, he's doing the turtle strut away from the achievement line. But notice turtles are known to be slow. So these are students who are high achieving students, but I'm not getting the type of growth I need to get out of my high achieving students. These are the kids who can do the work, who come in at grade level, but they're just not doing anything for you. You're not unlocking their growth potential, and they're just kind of like doing slowly but surely, they're walking away, trotting away from achievement. These students are the ones that when we look at our EVOS data, we don't get any growth from. They came in at a 4, they stayed at a 4, they didn't grow. So we gotta be very careful making sure we're pushing these kids, because if we don't push them, they're gonna slowly trot away from achievement line off over here into no growth. So you really want to watch these kids because they can do, just need to be pushed. The top part of my chart represents high growing students, but 2 different types of high growth students. On the left-hand side, these are my low achieving students typically, but man, are they growing. And so these kids in that more like a peachish color, they're running fast towards the achievement line. Then the wind beneath them, Usain Bolt doing the opposite run. So the lower they are though, the slower they're running, the higher they are, the faster they're running towards the achievement line. I love to see when kids are in this peach area, especially my low performance students, because it tells me they're moving at a rate that I might get them to jump over into being on grade level and getting the type of growth that they need to get. So our peach color kids are a low performance student, but they're growing so fast, they're going to be meeting those proficiency mark if they continue at that rate. On the right-hand side are my high achieving students, high growth. This is, I like to call it the sweet spot. So the students in here are students who can do the work, and they're not only doing the work, but they're growing at a rate that I want to see. The higher they are in the chart, the better. That we want them to all be huddled on the chart up here. We want them to be like they're running off the charts. That's where we would eventually want our kids. So if now when I print my report or look at my quadrant chart and kids are down here, by the time the spring, I want to see them higher up in the charts. So those are the fields. So here is what I want you to pay attention to, the arrows on this sheet. When kids are in these quadrants, this is the type of movement they will make and we want them to make, right? So my kids in the pink won't just hop over to the yellow. They first go up into the peach and then they move over into the green. That's the movement we want them to make. That's the movement they should make if they're growing. And you'll see here my yellow students down here, I want them to keep going up. My green, I want them off the charts. My peach, I want them over into the green area. But remember, we always adjust our achievement line because we want to get a true accurate picture of how they're truly moving. So the arrows represents the movement we want our kids to make from benchmark to benchmark. Now, when you look at your spring, this is how you want to see the kids move. So I would download this chart, save it or print it, have it. When the springtime comes around, you then pull that up and you can have the two charts. You can look and compare how the students are moving. So now we're going to move into focus on instruction. The reports we're going to look at are 4 reports that we're going to identify, three reports. We're going to identify. How we look at these reports depend on the time of year. So it's the class report, the class breakdown report, and the learning continuum. These are the reports we use to inform our instructional practices when we're looking at our MAP reports. The first report is the class report. The class reports gives us the academic health of our class. And so there are 4 areas highlighted here on this class report that we're going to focus on and I'm going to talk about. So the first one, let me go back. The first one is the mean RIT. So you'd always remember, need to have your Lincoln Study handy dandy. So when I pull up my class report and I see for the right subject and I see this area, the one thing I want to look at is the mean RIT. So I see here the mean RIT. This is a 5th grade class. Yes, a 5th grade class. So 5th grade 201. If I were to go to my Lincoln Study, if this was my class, I'm going to go to the Lincoln Study 5th grade, and I'm going to go across to 201 up. 201, and this time of year in reading is at a non-proficient. And I can tell you it's really a level 1 because I just know the Lincoln Study and what it used to be, it is a level 1. So I am concerned that my student in the winter time is at a level 1. This is the overall academic health of my class. So in my class in reading, my students are at a level 1. I am concerned in the winter because I've done some teaching. I've been teaching my heart out since August. However, the teaching, this RIT score and the Lincoln Study is telling me they're nowhere near where I want them to be, because right now, honestly, you want your students to be at a level 3 at minimum, pushing on level 4 at this time of the year. So I'm concerned, and I know now just from initially, if they're level 1, I need to do some reteaching. So now I need to go down and see where I need to do the reteaching. So I'm going to come down to my area level, my number 2 area. And this is a fake report, a sample report. So it's not like the one we have in CMS, but just it's the same concept and thinking. So you see my 3 goal areas, that's what they call them in MAP. We call them topics in CMS or North Carolina. So I see there's 3 topics here. I need to assess in which of the topics are my students growing and which of the topics they're not growing. But here's my other thinking. I know I've been teaching literature. Oh, I look at my 3 topics. I have literature, informational text, and vocabulary acquisition. I'm saying we've spent at least 60 to 75% of the year so far doing, literature. I've been teaching literature. So I want to go all the way over to where the number 3 is and look at my mean RIT. I see that my mean RIT for literature is 201. I already know that 201 is a level 1. I am concerned because I've been teaching at least 60 to 75% of that topic. So I expected that mean RIT to be higher and to be at least a level 3. Let's see what that would be if I go to my Lincoln study. I wanted for a 5th grade level 3 at minimum. I wanted those students to be at least a 216, pushing on 217, which is a level 4. So it's very important for me to, assess where my kids are. So that tells me the topic of literature that I've been teaching, my kids have not been getting it. I need to dig a little bit deeper in the next report to figure out where and who I need to reteach. This just tells me that the teacher is not sticking. I don't know who it's not sticking for yet. So I look at informational text. I know I've also been teaching that. That's a level 204 because we know reading is cyclical. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been spending all year long teaching this literature and informational text, and that's still at a 204. Still place to reteach. Vocabulary acquisition, and for the purpose of this, we're going to pretend I haven't done anything with vocabulary acquisition. It's at a 198. I'm okay with that because I haven't really taught anything in vocabulary acquisition yet. I'm getting ready to start that. So this is giving me a pre-assessment information that they're level 1. Oh my gosh, I got to teach them, right? That's all that's saying. So depending on what I've taught, how I respond to that mean RIT score is going to be different. It's going to inform what needs to be retaught or what I'm going to use as a pre-assessment of what I'm getting ready to teach. So that's how I use the mean RIT for each topic. Then my number 4 area, which is the standard deviation. The standard deviation helps me as a teacher identify how should I divide my instructional time. The standard deviation really tells me if it's single digits 0 to 9, that the kids' zone of proximal development, the kids are ready to learn at the same place. Single digit standard deviation tells me I should have more whole group because they're ready to learn at the same place and less small group time. So if I have 60 minutes of instructional time, I should spend more of that on whole group and a small amount of that time on small group because their single digit tells me they're in the same range. A double digit standard deviation, and the higher the double digit standard deviation, the more profound this statement is. It tells me my student skills and abilities are all over the place. The zone of proximal development is very wide and a range, and I need to spend more of that 60 minutes of instruction on small group and less on whole group, because I have to do more time on small group to meet the individual small group needs versus the whole group time. So again, how I divide my time is based on the type of number I'm looking at in my standard deviation. Single digits, more whole group, less small group. Double digits, more small group, less whole group instruction. So that's how we first look at the class report. That's our first thing. From there, remember I said I need to figure out who I need to reteach, who the teaching wasn't landing on, or if I'm getting ready to teach vocabulary acquisition, how should I design my small group? The next report is your class breakdown. The class breakdown is one of the most underutilized reports in MAP that teachers do not use. And I just think they've got not enough time to realize the importance of it. The class breakdown will put my students in groups. So if I'm trying to reteach them, I can see who needs what based on the group that they're in. I tell you the reason why you see 3 groups here is because research tells us for a teacher to effectively meet the needs of his or her small group, 3 to 4 groups max is what the class should be divided in. You can have more groups, but to effectively maximize on the learning time, 3 to 4 small groups is what research tells. We know a lot of times teachers we're juggling 6, 7 groups. So what you see here is just the teacher attempt to try to collapse the group. But don't just collapse them based on how you see it here, nice and pretty. What really should inform you collapsing students into a different group is based on how the students academically behave as an individual student. You can say this student academically performs the same way this student performs. So if I'm going to adjust the groups, I could adjust it based on their academic performance using other data sources I know about the student. So the class breakdown really helps you to identify where to go. When you go into the class breakdown, you want to focus on the topic that you went in there for. So you can see here, the 3 topics. If I'm going in to see what it says for literature and how my groupings are, when I come here, my eye is just going to be across literature. I'm not going to look at the other 2 topic areas because I'm not focused on that. So once I decide that's where I want to go, you can see it's I can click on that and I can get from here the learning continuum. Once I look at my groups and I decided that how I'm going to collapse the groups to get to the learning continuum, which is where I really want to be, I click on literature and it will take me to the learning continuum. When I get to the learning continuum, it really then identifies how and when, how I should support them. You should see your RIT scores, you should see the standards, and you should see the students in those groups. And so it really is where it points to that. And I want to just give you a display here, which you can see when you go to the learning continuum, you should see this at the top of your screen. You're going to click on the word edit display because you want to change how the information is displayed in the learning continuum. When you click on edit display, it will open up to a screen on the bottom like this. And you want to click by standards. You want to click group by standards because we are a standards-driven district. And then you want to click the grade level that you teach, and then you want to close it. Once you close it, it will take you back to this original sheet screen, and then you click on the topic that you want to look at. Once you click on the topic, it will open up. You should see RIT scores on the side. You should see standards. You should see learning statements, and you should see students or no students on the right-hand side. So this is the layout. RIT score, standards, learning statements, students. That's telling you the students who are here, they're ready to learn at these standards with these learning statements. When you come in here, it can get confusing. If you notice in this one, there are 3 standards. You have to pay attention to which standard am I teaching. So I'm not going to teach all of these. I'm just going to look, I'm teaching, this is what I'm teaching. So I'm going to focus on what's the learning statements under that standard. That's what it's saying. When I get ready to teach this next standard, this is how I'm going to come to this standard to see what they're ready to learn for these groups of students. Remember, if you move students from one group to the next, you want to pay attention to, they're going to be in the original groups that that map put them in, but you move them physically. So you have to remember that what you pick for Dion is what you pick for Claudia because you move Claudia into Dion's group. And that, my friends, is the map growth for teachers in a nutshell. A lot of information.